All right, let's dive into something that every single React developer has wrestled with. I'm talking about forms. We've all built them, we've loved them when they work, and yeah, we've probably wanted to throw our keyboards across the room because of them. They're everywhere, they're essential, but let's be real, they can be an absolute nightmare. And this is just a fundamental truth, right? Every serious app has forms. You just can't build a real data-driven application without them. Think about it. From a basic login screen to some super complex multi-step wizard, forms are literally the backbone of how users interact with our apps. It's just a fact. Okay, so if they're so fundamental, why does it feel like we're constantly in a battle with them? Seriously, why do our form components swell up into these unreadable monsters that feel like they'll break if you just breathe on them wrong? And don't even get me started on how they can slow the whole app down. I know you've felt this frustration. We all have. And these are the quiet struggles, right? The battles we fight alone at our desks. You're wrestling with validation logic, you're trying to manage all the loading states for an async submission, and then you're trying to gracefully handle whatever bizarre error messages the server decides to throw back at you. It feels like it should be so much simpler than this. Well, here's the thing, and this is super important. The problem probably isn't you. If you're struggling with this stuff, it's not a sign that you're a bad developer. The issue is that we've all been taught a pattern, a way of doing things, that has some really deep, fundamental flaws baked right in from the start. So let's really break that down. The conventional wisdom, the React way we're all taught, is to use controlled inputs, right? Every little change, every character you type gets stored in React state. The idea is that this gives you a single, reliable source of truth. But what's the harsh reality, the big consequence? Your entire form, and sometimes even your whole page, is forced to re-render on every single keystroke. Think about that. And that, right there, leads us to the first huge problem. We're not talking about a minor inconvenience here. This is an absolute performance killer. Now, for a tiny little contact form you might not even notice. But for a big, complex form, the kind you find in real enterprise apps, this approach makes your application feel sluggish, janky, and just unresponsive. We're basically punishing the component just for doing its job. But here's the twist. The issue actually runs deeper than just performance. The slow rendering, that's just a symptom. You could say the performance hit is the smoke. Now we're going to go look for the fire. Because it's not just about how we handle state, it's about where we're putting all the logic. And this is the next really critical idea. Look, your form logic doesn't belong in React state. Storing the form's values in state, okay, that's one thing. But we've gotten into this habit of stuffing all the logic that goes with it in there too. And what happens? Our components become this tangled, unmanageable mess of validation rules, submission handlers, and error states all mixed together. What we need to do instead is think of all this stuff as one single cohesive unit. Let's call it form logic. All of it, the validation, the error states, the async submission logic, even knowing the difference between client and server rules, all of that belongs together. It's its own self-contained system with its own specific job to do. And you know what's so great about that? When you treat your form logic as its own little contained world, you get this beautiful separation of concerns. Your application's core business logic, the code that handles what happens after the form is submitted, it shouldn't have to care. It shouldn't need to know the first thing about how the form validated an email address. It should just get a nice, neat package of clean, validated data and go on its merry way. Okay, so we've been building up to this. After everything we've talked about, what is the biggest mistake we're making? We've touched on performance, we've touched on architecture, but the biggest mistake, it isn't a line of code. It's not about using the wrong hook or misconfiguring some library. This is something you can't just fix with a quick code change. No, the biggest mistake, it's a matter of philosophy. It all comes down to how we think about our forms. It's about their role, their scale, and their place within our application as a whole. And here it is. This is the truth most people won't say out loud. If your form logic is bigger than your business logic, you built it wrong. Just let that sink in for a second. If the code you wrote to validate fields and manage loading spinners is bigger and more complex than the code that actually does something important with that data, then your priorities are completely backwards. You've spent all your energy building the box instead of focusing on what's inside it. So, the crucial point, the new philosophy we need to adopt is this. Keep your form logic contained, simple, and separate. Treat it like a well-defined, isolated module. It shouldn't be all tangled up with your UI rendering, and it definitely shouldn't be bigger or more important than the actual core purpose of your app. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to take back to your own projects. Think about the last big form you built. Be honest. Is your form logic bigger than your business logic? Go and look at the code. How many lines are just for managing the form itself versus how many are for the actual important work that happens when the user clicks submit? I have a feeling the answer might just surprise you.